On this edition of the program, everything we know about the fallout from the shooting in Minneapolis, Donald Trump and Governor Walz speak, and a shakeup at DHS. A lot. I'm going to empty the notebook on that. Trump, meanwhile, going to Iowa. We have a new Senate candidate in the great state of Florida, and Evan Scrimshaw joins us to talk our great neighbor to the north. Oh, Canada. Oh, Carney. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Welcome, everybody, to the Politics program for January 28th, 2026. Your old pal, Justin Robert Young, joining you from Austin, Texas, live and in living high-definition color on Substack TV. Get your Substack TV app. I don't know if they do algorithms on the Substack TV app. I'm just betting that they eventually will. And somebody from Substack is going to contact me and say, for whatever reason, you are an outsized part of the Substack TV experience. And I'm relying on you guys to do it. Anyway, with that out of the way, we do have some serious stuff to get into. Obviously, an ugly scene in Minneapolis, Minnesota over the weekend, and a lot going on. Much of it not a surprise to people who listen to this show, because we have been covering the internal fight at DHS for months now, and it has played out on a larger perspective amongst dire circumstances. We also have some legislative stuff that is now at the fore. We have that. In our update, we're going to talk the Trump administration trying desperately to reframe things. They were already trying to desperately reframe things. And, this is not going to make it any easier for them, but they are going to try, specifically in Iowa. We're going to dot on out to the UK to talk about the death of the Conservative Party out there. I don't know, man. Is it good to be a Tory right now? And Vindman in, Democrat for Florida Senate. I've got a little bit of inside sauce on that. Plus, Evan Scrimshaw talking Canada. So let's get into everything I know about what is happening in the White House right now. So let's just state facts. Number one, the death of Alex Preddy was violent, on camera, and a series now, one time's an accident with Renee Good. And we're going to get to this in a second on why this video is different. With Renee Good, obviously, there were people mad, very mad, believed that she was murdered. But she's in a car and it's going forward and then she dies, right? If you were to just take that snapshot, absent everything else, it's hard for you to see that in any kind of totally black and white scenario. That's not the case with Preddy. And unfortunately for our leadership at the Department of Homeland Security, and specifically Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller, who has had an outsized voice in that organization, they decided to do the same thing they did with Renee Good with Alex Preddy. So with Renee Good, they initially said, she was a domestic terrorist and she was running her car into an officer. Now, as the facts came out about that, it became less and less likely that she was intentionally trying to ram an officer. Now, that doesn't mean that she wasn't there protesting. She was. Doesn't mean that she wasn't putting herself in a situation where a officer pulling his gun and shooting was possible. In my opinion, she did. But she didn't intentionally try to kill him with the car. At least they were luring an officer in front of the car so she could hit the gas. And that was the initial sense that Noam gave. Now, I think she got a pass on that because her over exuberance, let's use that phrase, was when you squint, it was an exaggeration, but she did hit the gas, went toward the officer shoots her. All right. Fuzzier. When Preddy dies, she comes out and she says that this man brandished a weapon and was intending to inflict maximum damage on the officers that were on the ground. There is no evidence to suggest that that is the case. That I have seen, and I will hazard a guess, that will ever be seen by the world's eyes. Now, the reality of Alex Preddy's death is something that is still going to be determined. But there was no reason, either for Renee Good or for Alex Preddy, that the head of the Department of Homeland Security needs to be coming out with a definitive ruling on this event until after everything is reviewed. It is the consequence of a tweet first, ask questions later style of leadership. One that doesn't matter so much when you are in the world of the political, where hyperbole is the coin of the realm, but is incredibly important when you are dealing with law enforcement or anything that the majority of our society needs to take seriously. The erosion of trust in these institutions is bad. And it's part of the reason why some people voted the Trump administration back in, because they believed that there was an erosion of trust under Biden. The reality of what happened there doomed Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski, who is essentially running that department upon the edicts of Stephen Miller. But this was not something that is new, okay? You guys, you folks who listen to this show have heard me talk about the number one thing that has been fascinating me is the behind the scenes fight at DHS, with the lines being Stephen Miller talking to Corey Lewandowski and Kristi Noem, and then Corey Lewandowski finding people within DHS, which includes ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, to put together what they want, and sidelining some people, most notably people like Tom Homan. Now, Tom Homan has some friends in high places as well, up to and including Susie Wiles, the chief of staff for Donald Trump, who loves Stephen Miller, right? Susie Wiles and Stephen Miller, they're still on the same team, presumably. But Susie Wiles hates Corey Lewandowski. And the voices around this administration that have said, hey, this is maybe not a great thing, we are prioritizing the wrong way to do this, have become louder. So what is that conflict? Well, according to all reports, and this I'm going to repeat stuff for people who have listened to this show in the past, but the fight is Tom Homan believes that there is a hearts and minds element of this process. You are not going to be able to deport people at the scale that they want to deport people without there being sticky situations at times. And Tom Homan is no shrinking violet when it comes to that. He's a guy who's been on television saying, no, we're not going to separate children and their parents. We'll deport both of them. He is a hardliner when it comes to this. He believes that if you have a final order for removal from the United States, it is ICE's job to get you the hell out of there. And he has supported going into sanctuary cities to find people that he believes are being blocked or protected directly or indirectly by sanctuary city and state policies. What he's not a fan of is the kind of roving gangs on the street tactics that were supported by Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, Corey Lewandowski, and Bovino, the person that was elevated to commander at large for the Customs and Border Patrol so he could put his officers on the street. It was those officers that shot down Alex Preddy. Tom Homan has been out on television a lot over the last week. There was an article that was put out on Friday by Mark Caputo in Axios that I believed was the Rosetta Stone being a flare being sent up saying anybody who wants to take out Corey Lewandowski, here's how you take out Corey Lewandowski. And in that, the central question as to why the roving gangs approach was being conducted was rebutted. Because Stephen Miller is numbers obsessed. Numbers obsessed. Talking to somebody who is adjacent to the administration last week, I brought this up. I said, Stephen Miller is numbers obsessed. They said, look, he's like that to everyone. Doesn't matter if you're at DHS, doesn't matter if you're at Housing and Urban Development. He's got numbers, he's got details, and he is going to press you on them until you tell him that you are on it or you prove that you have done something. It was Stephen Miller's opinion that ICE was moving too slow. And specifically, the number that vexed him was how many people that Obama deported versus how many people were being deported by the Trump administration, especially considering so many had been released into the interior under Biden. Now, Tom Homan comes out last week and says, look, we are on track to deport more than we did under Obama. And also, the Obama numbers were kind of juiced, specifically because they were counting people that were turned away at the border as a deportation. Well, now we have much less of that problem. So even if you were going to do that now, there are less people coming to the border than there have been in years. The border is, secure, which is, I still think, an underreported story. But focusing on the interior, the Homan faction won on Saturday when Noem goes out on television, lies about a dead man, and now this already fairly explosive fault line just totally flips on its head. On Monday, Donald Trump says, I am sending Tom Homan to Minneapolis. I am talking directly to Tim Walz. I am talking directly to Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis. So let's talk about Walz and Frey, because there is another part of this story that I do think needs to be understood if we want to get a full picture of what is happening. Because while the tactics of ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, the DHS strategy of putting a lot of people on the streets is real, so is the organization of the protests in Minneapolis. And this is something that's come to light over the last 72 hours. In my mind, and I would assume that it is in the mind of you, the listener and viewer to this show, these protests were kind of being organized in the way that you see protests that are organized in your own lives. Somebody sees a Instagram story or there's a Facebook group. You show up. That's what happens. Maybe if you're very, very organized, you're talking to some people and you kind of have somebody that's in the know, and so you show up to see a thing. Or you are just aware that all of a sudden ICE is in your neighborhood, you're going to run out. What we know now is that the protesters, and specifically the protesters that were around Renee Good and Alex Preddy, these guys were both involved in an organization called ICE Watch. And ICE Watch was being organized in what I can only describe as an extraordinarily efficient way. Largely on the group messaging app Signal. There were divisions of the certain sectors of the city that were done on congressional districts, so everybody knew where they were going to be. There were rules of when you were going to arrive somewhere, when you need to stay in your own area. And then there were rules of engagement in terms of how you were dealing with ICE. There's a question as to exactly how far some of these protesters were being pushed on what to do. I don't think that, I'll put it this way. Regardless of the repulsion of whether or not you believe that there was a problem with the people being out in these roving gang approaches for ICE and CPB, if you are obstructing a federal officer, it is a felony. Now, what happens when you get arrested for a felony? Well, in a nonviolent protest, you get handcuffed, you get thrown in a car, and then you deal with it. You have, you have your legal consequences, but you know that you have done a moral right. There have been more physical interactions with ICE Watch and CPB and ICE. And I'm only here to say that this is a very well organized thing. These protests are not spontaneous, I guess. And I'm not saying, look, could there be a sinister element to it? Yeah. There could be. I don't know. All I know is that when I saw the size and scope of the organization, I was quite frankly impressed. I did not know that the protest movement like that had it in them, but they do. I say all that to say this. Walls and Frey have their own domestic problem with those protest organizations. Because when they're focused outward, they're focused outward. But if Walls and Frey are looked at as somebody that is working too closely or cooperating nearly at all with either the administration or DHS, they will not hesitate to protest them. They will not hesitate to make life difficult internally for both of those politicians. So that is something that I am watching right now. Let's touch very quickly on the legislative thing, because that is something that will probably change even by the time that you listen to this. The House advanced all the funding bills they needed to advance to avoid a government shutdown at the end of last week before the snowstorm. John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, could have kept the Senate in town to pass it. Boy, if he looks back in his, if he had a crystal ball, he probably would have, because now it looks like we are on track for a government shutdown on Friday. And the reason we're on track for a government shutdown on Friday is that now there are senators, Democratic senators, that are saying we will not vote for anything that funds ICE. Now, there are some exceptions. Fetterman says he wants things reformed, but he's not going to vote for a government shutdown. Still, there's enough votes that shut this whole thing right the hell down. The Republicans are offering executive orders on certain things. Democrats are not into it. We've got several days between here and there, so I don't want to get too prescriptive as to what is going to happen because we don't know. I'm just saying this is a real problem right now. From everything I am hearing, it is a real problem. The likelihood of a government shutdown is now overwhelming, in my opinion. But we'll have more on that in the episodes throughout the rest of the week. One last thought on this. There was a moment during the Biden administration when there were hundreds of Haitian migrants on the border in Mexico. And it was a moment that was a stark visual for me because I don't know if you're aware, Haiti is not close to the southern border of the United States. It takes quite a bit of doing from people that are really poor to get from here to there. The closest way that Haitian migrants have in the past gotten into the United States is to take a boat from Hispaniola, the island for which Haiti and Dominican Republic share, to the United States of America in Florida. It was just a shocking moment, a shocking visual for which I was like, whoa, the border is a different problem right now. It is not what I thought it was. Immediate recognition. A story told in a few frames. And it was imagery that stuck on the Biden administration, stuck on Joe Biden, stuck on Kamala Harris until Election Day 2024. I'm here to tell you that the killing of Alex Preddy is that level, if not greater, of imagery. Several officers surrounding a man and shooting him several times in the back. That immediately says that something is different than the way you thought it was. Or, if you already disagreed with it, it's exactly what you thought it was and worse. This will stick with the Trump administration. This will stick with whomever is running for that nomination in 2028. This will not be forgotten like oh so many other things. It is iconography, in my opinion. And more than Renee Good, it is unshakable. This is your update. Brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. It's where you need to go if you would like to get 2 bonus episodes of this show. Obviously, a lot happening this week. This would be a good week to do it. If you got the annual subscription today, you would not only go all the way through the midterms, but we're into like candidate announcement territory right now for 2028. If you got the annual right now, a reminder that Donald Trump announced his 24 campaign within this window. Well, somebody else, you would hear it here first or best. Probably best. Probably not first. Anyway, President Donald Trump is returning to Iowa as part of an early defensive strategy ahead of the 26 midterms, signaling Republican concerns about a narrow House margin in districts that he won comfortably, but GOP candidates have barely carried. The White House is betting Trump's in-person presence can boost turnout amongst voters who supported him during 24, but skip midterms. The trip comes amid slipping poll numbers, economic anxiety, and backlash over immigration and foreign policy. Democrats argue that the visit ties vulnerable Republicans too closely to Trump, while GOP strategists see it as a necessity, a risky effort to energize the base without alienating swing voters. Talking to somebody inside the GOP machinery, he said the mood is this. They believe they'll lose the House. They believe they'll keep the Senate. They believe everything is going to be expensive. Everybody's going to have to spend money. There is not going to be war chests that you will be passing on to 2028. You are going to have to work. You are going to have to liquidate those bank accounts. You are going to have to be aggressive on television because the margins are going to be slim. And either you are fighting or you are losing. I'm of the belief that the only way out is through with Trump. The GOP, this is Trump's party. You can't run away from him. Because either you are with him or you are in active war against him. One is a 50-50 chance at win, the other suicide. So, Dems to breaks. Let's take a look outside of our borders for a second. Former UK Home Secretary Suella Braverman has defected from the Conservative Party to the hard right Reform UK, delivering another blow to the Tories after their 2024 election collapse. Braverman, fired in 2023 by then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, said the Conservatives were leading Britain toward managed decline and embraced Reform leader Nigel Farage's message that the country is broken by migration and liberal values. Her defection gives Reform 8 seats in Parliament, even as it pulls ahead of both the Conservatives and Keir Starmer's governing Labour Party, intensifying pressure on Britain's fractured center-right. We're eventually going to have somebody on from the UK to talk about this. I just wanted to surface it with you guys because, rarely do you see major parties in, countries like US, UK, Canada, the ones, Australia maybe, that I pay attention to the most. It doesn't happen all that often. It might be happening in the UK right now. The Conservative Party might be toaster-rooney. That's a technical term. And finally, we have an ad for you. This is Vindman.
Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a National Security Council official who testified against the president during the impeachment hearings, has been fired. Jim, the president has been fuming about Vindman apparently ever since he testified.
The last time you saw me was here, swearing an oath to tell the truth about a president who broke his. See, my family came to America as refugees to escape tyranny. And I sure as hell was not going to bow down to some wannabe tyrant. This president unleashed a reign of terror and retribution, not just against me and my family, but against all of us. Today, our country is in chaos. Thug militias attacking citizens, tariffs pushing prices sky high, healthcare premiums through the roof. And Florida homeowners are being absolutely screwed because Ashley Moody caved to the big insurance companies. They put Moody in the Senate to be a yes vote for Trump and the billionaires. She's not Florida's senator, she's theirs. I'm Alex Vindman, and I'm running to be your voice in the Senate. I served 21 years in the Army, was wounded in Iraq, I served presidents of both parties, and I've seen corruption in Washington up close. Over $1 million in Moody's corporate stock was traded last year, while she had access to insider information only Congress gets. That should be outlawed. They gutted disaster assistance for people trying to rebuild their lives, but she's okay with $40 billion bailouts for Argentina? Where's the bailout for Florida's families? I stepped up when my country needed a soldier. I stood up when someone had to say, no one is above the law. I'm asking you, stand with me now to put a check on Donald Trump and the corrupt politicians who think your tax dollars are their personal piggy bank. The billionaires and the special interests will throw everything they've got to try to stop us. But in the infantry, we didn't back down from a fight. In a democracy, you decide who's going to stand for you, the patriot or the politician. Join us.
Ashley Moody is the prohibitive favorite in that race. I do not think that Vindman is a particularly great candidate. I think he is a charisma hole. And I think that ad is the best he will ever look. It is the best he will ever sound. And it's a well-constructed ad. I like the ad. This is the first time that I will have put Florida Democrat and competence in the same sentence in a very, very, very long time. They are not a party known for it. I will assure you that nobody involved in the creation of that ad is a lifelong Florida Democrat. I assume it came from out of state somewhere because those issues were correct. Home price, insurance prices in Florida, a ban on trading stocks inside Congress, a check on an administration that Florida, which is still a purple state. I know it's MAGA, but I'm telling people it is a purple state. The check on the administration is something that you can sell to undecided indies, maybe even right-leaning indies. I don't think it will last with Vindman. He's a pretty radical guy. He does not come off as likable when he is not just barking MSNBC talking points. He will eventually revert to that. I don't think that necessarily plays statewide. But if you were to only live in that ad, oh boy, he doesn't look terrible. I think he looks good. And that's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com, where you need to go. 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Go ahead and check it out. And now, Mr. Evan Scrimshaw. Well, whenever there's a large conversation about Canada, we need to bring on our number one Canadian expert and friend, Evan Scrimshaw. How you doing, buddy?
Thanks for having me, man. Happy to come on.
And we're actually in the wheelhouse of what you write about exclusively these days, much to my chagrin, because I don't follow Canadian politics in the same way that you write about it so exquisitely for your audience. But our worlds crossed over the last few days, and that is because your Prime Minister, Mark Carney, out at the world stage, a very lauded speech in Davos, which I found to be a little Sorkonian for my taste, and maybe a little bit less lacking in substance. And I didn't quite follow exactly what the point was, but now he is back in the crosshairs and seemingly stuck in the middle with you between China and the United States, as Canada is wont to be. Explain this whole thing for me.
Okay, so Joe Biden asked Justin Trudeau to impose 100% tariffs on Chinese-made EVs. Justin Trudeau said yes. Joe Biden or Kamala Harris loses the presidential election. Justin Trudeau gets unceremoniously cooed. Donald Trump gets Mark Carney elected prime minister to a full term, despite the conservatives having a 25-point polling lead before Trump started saying all his 51st state crap.
Yeah.
China puts retaliatory tariffs on Canadian canola, lobster, various other seafood products. That hits Atlantic Canada, which is a liberal stronghold, but a stronghold that the liberals have been a bit weaker in recently, and Western Canadian grain, which not a political problem for the liberals so much, but is a national unity problem. And, we got to be nice to them. Carney goes to China, cuts a deal. Trump is pretty okay with the deal. He says, look, if you can make a deal with China, you should make a deal with China.
Yeah.
Then Carney rocks up to Davos and gives a speech about middle powers needing to band together, essentially saying we can no longer live in a world where we assume the Americans will be nice to us and will protect us, and we need to find strength up the middle and stop selectively enforcing the rules of the game, aka stop holding the Americans to a lower standard, letting the Americans get away with nonsense because we're trying to suck up to them.
Yeah.
Trump, unsurprisingly, doesn't like the speech. Even less surprisingly, hates the fact that Mark Carney got the big, oh my God, what a speech. Have you seen the Davos speech of the week? And now Trump's mad, and he's now claiming that, we might do 100% tariffs on Canada, but then backs away from it. And then is now claiming they've had a good conversation Tuesday morning as we're recording. So who knows?
So the headlines that I saw was that Carney had stepped back from that Chinese deal. Is that true, or is that still in flux like everything else?
No. What has happened is people have deliberately obfuscated what the deal actually is. It's just a tariff removal deal on a couple of things. It's not a free trade deal.
Yeah.
What Trump said was if they sign a free trade deal, which we're not even legally allowed to do under the USMCA, then the 100% tariff would hit. But it's not a free trade deal. It's something close to a free trade deal. And like Trump is trying to claim the win of, Canada's not going to do a free trade deal. But it's like, that was never a thing that was going to happen anyways. But they're trying to claim it's a win so that Trump can back down of this stupid tariff idea.
Gotcha. So this is a messaging from the Carney government to say that we are not going to do a thing so they can diffuse the moment.
Correct.
Gotcha. What were your thoughts on the Davos speech?
So I have a complicated set of feelings about the Davos speech. As a speech, it is obviously a quite impressive work of oratory. The invocation of Czech dissident turned President Václav Havel was, I think, quite interesting. The stuff about the middle powers was genuinely revelatory and bold for a Canadian to be the one to point all of this out. The bigger problem with the speech is just like, it's a little bit vague, deliberately vague.
Little bit?
In a few places, because...
Yeah. I mean, it's very odd to be very vague when you're comparing yourself to Václav Havel.
Right. So one of the things that's, frustrated some people is the, how do I put this politely? Interesting human rights records of two of the countries that Canada's doing business with right now. China, who the Canadian Parliament decreed was doing a genocide, and Qatar, which, do we even really need to explain that one? And Carney talks about, fundamental rights is women's equality, is gay rights. Are those fundamental rights anymore? Kind of unclear based on the speech, kind of unclear based on giving a speech about, how you will stand up for fundamental rights in regards to and hinting at Greenland and Denmark and the fundamental right to sovereignty, but then sort of implying that the same, less than a week after you cut a deal with Qatar.
Yeah.
Not great. However, I am in the minority for having a slight issue with that speech, because the Canadian public are lapping it up. Carney's approvals are up nearly 10 points in a week. Like, people are responding to it quite well. And I think people are willing to, for now, forgive the vagaries because of the fact that it is the one thing it is clear on is that it's a rebuke of Trump.
It's America bad. Yeah. I mean, I think that is good politics around the world right now.
It is shockingly good politics around the world. You've seen it in Denmark. A left of center government that probably wasn't going to win again is now cruising in the polls. Carney had been in a bit of a, fallow period, and suddenly Trump decides to poke his head up north again, calls him governor one more time. Now we're looking back at, borderline of, there's snap election rumors in Canada. Not that I buy those, but Trump really does have a reverse Midas touch when it comes to the domestic politics of countries that he decides to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, as little as I think that goes into Trump's calculus with things, and you would make an argument for somebody that has looked further and further from American shores for his wins, you would think that maybe he would think about these kind of things a little bit more than he has. But there is a pretty one-to-one reaction of Trump talks about you, you become more popular around the world.
Yeah, and that's going to be especially interesting because next year France goes to the polls, and that's going to be a really interesting success because the National Rally, the old National Front, Marine Le Pen's party, they have actually been relatively critical of Trump, which is going to be quite interesting to see whether or not they do not want to get Poilievred, as I think we are now calling the verb of getting destroyed, being a right-wing party destroyed by Trump's politics. But, that's going to be an interesting one because, Trump hasn't really gone at France very, very much. Macron does seem to have some sort of, like the British press love to pretend that Starmer is the Trump whisperer in Europe. It really does seem like it's Macron more than it's Starmer.
He's got more Macron stories than he's got Starmer stories, although they're all the same stories. Is somebody in an accent calls Donald Trump and goes, no, Donald, in whatever accent he wants to do.
Right. But Macron has not been called out in the way that Starmer was called out. I think it was last week for the deal to give some islands to Mauritius for some legal nonsense, which if anyone wants to read into that, the Chagos Islands deal, it's one of the funnier things that has ever happened.
I got called on the British television for that one. They were very excited to talk about the Chagos Islands and Mauritius, which I read that as that was Trump. I mean, if there is any kind of inside dealing between Trump and foreign right-wing parties, Nigel Farage is probably the only person whose phone call that he takes immediately. And that seemed to me, if only because I was brought on to GBTV, which hosts a television show by Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. They were excited that Donald Trump was talking about a thing that they were into and not tariffs, which Nigel Farage had to come out in opposition of. That's it's going to be interesting to see because there obviously are kind of ascendant right-wing parties around the world. But nobody's really been able to square how do you stop the anti-Trump wave, which is kind of all encompassing across the political spectrum in countries that are not the United States.
Yeah, the way to do it would be for Donald Trump to shut up. Like that would be the way that you could do this. Like, because the thing about the Canadian Liberals is they were not a government that deserved to be reelected. Plainly, nothing. Justin Trudeau has a very mixed record. He did not deserve to be reelected. And so
he apparently didn't deserve to be reelected as Katy Perry's boyfriend either. So there's something to be taken from there.
That is just deeply, deeply embarrassing for everyone involved. I can't figure out who is punching up in that relationship, but also
the fact that it's a question raises some deep, deep troubling questions for the Canadian psyche.
It's not great. But Trudeau didn't deserve to be reelected. A liberal government with a new leader didn't deserve to be reelected. I've been quite happy with the Carney reign so far, but Trump just killed what would have been a not good because I'm a liberal and I'm a small L liberal, but just killed a competent, normal conservative party.
Yeah.
For essentially fun. And they're he's just going to keep electing governments that don't deserve to be reelected because he just enjoys it. He just needs to stop. Someone needs to take his True Social account. Because it's to some extent, I think, yes, the Chagos Islands thing was a little bit a reaction to Nigel Farage probably trying to do some diplomacy. However, It was also the fact that the British press had spent all of Monday, 2 Mondays ago now, talking about how Keir Starmer's the Trump whisperer and he had a conversation and now Trump understands what's actually happening in Greenland. He's not so mad anymore.
Yeah.
And then the next night, Trump is like, actually, no, you guys are all idiots and we shouldn't do this Chagos Island deal. And it's so Trump, and that has always been the case. Trump has always been mad when he gets told that he got rolled in a deal, right? Or when people start claiming that they can
when somebody is taking
him.
credit for whispering.
Right.
He does not like the reports of whispers.
Yeah, of course not, because it makes him seem like an infantile, child, right? It makes him seem like he can just be.
You want to know what I think the theory of mind is with that on him is what he really finds distasteful about it is that somebody is making a name on being able to control him, right? Like think of like when he fell out with Steve Bannon. He fell out with Steve Bannon because Steve Bannon talked to Michael Wolff and, informed half a book about how he was the brilliant mind behind every good decision that Donald Trump did. Now, if he tells friends that, whatever. If he puts his name on it, it's a different story. And I think that's when you hear like in interviews, like that's the kind of stuff that he gets pissy about, is like somebody else puffing themselves up by talking about how great they are about talking to him.
Yeah, no, and obviously, if you're the president of the United States, you don't want other people taking credit for your wins or claiming that they control you or have like the inside scoop to getting whatever they want. Like, absolutely not. You want to be feared. You want Marco Rubio to hide the fact that he's sleeping on the plane and by putting a blanket over his head.
Yeah. It does make sense that, Donald Trump is not particularly adept at doing things that are cohesive down ballot in his own party. So it shouldn't really shock anybody that he doesn't really give a hoot about what happens to conceptually aligned parties around the world.
Yeah, there was like a great, hilarious, like a year ago sort of strand of conservatives. It's just like, no, we can like get him to stop talking. Like if we just like ask him politely enough, he'll shut up and then we could win the election, And I am sure.
Very Canadian strategy.
That Danielle Smith, the premier of Alberta, who literally said that she was going to do this at some conservative forum last year or had already been doing it, Like, I'm sure that message was passed along from people, and I'm sure the aides that they communicated this to were like, yes, that would be a smart plan. We would like that plan to happen because we don't like Justin Trudeau and we don't like the Liberals either. And then when the plan actually has to get to the guy who actually is required to shut up, Trump can't be controlled. He can't be managed. And so you're going to see, it's going to probably happen in Denmark. It's going to, France next year is going to be a big test, but like Trump is just going to keep saying stuff. He's going to keep saying stuff, and right-wing leaders in Europe are going to be able to blame Trump on the fact that they are in, weakening positions themselves. Speaking of Nigel Farage, I'm quite certain that, if this sort of swoon in the polls for reform continues, like I'm sure they'll blame it all on the Trump effect and completely ignore the fact that Farage has made some questionable decisions, bringing in former Tory politicians, that reform basically was created or revived because of the decisions of, and now letting them in the party. That is a domestic policy choice that hurts Farage, makes him look like a hypocrite, but they're just going to blame it all on Trump.
We covered that. We covered Suella Braverman coming into the Reform UK party in the update. And again, I got my hands full trying to figure out American stuff. So I only kind of casually understand the headlines, but I look at Suella Braverman going to the Reform Party and I see it more of like, oh, the Tories are dying more than Reform has a problem. Am I misreading that?
Well, Robert Jenrick, who has already come over to Reform, and now Suella Braverman, were two of the biggest ministers in the massive immigration wave post-Brexit. Farage had previously said that like there are limits to which Tories they would let into the party, into Reform. One of the ones named, it was Liz Truss and Suella Braverman, were both named as would not be allowed in. Now they are, with Jenrick, those are two people who are fairly important to the story of how, Boris sort of imploded and the sort of Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak sort of tenure completely imploded on themselves. And like, it's just one of these things where, Farage is making questionable decisions. I'm not saying it's political malpractice and it might hurt the Tories, but it also might hurt, labor voters from last time who were concerned about immigration, who were concerned about, who want Farage to be a proper working class right-wing populist, sort of more of the sort of like Trump mold, as opposed to being worried that that reform is just a new coat of paint on the old Tory party that they hate.
Gotcha.
But people are just going to blame Trump for their domestic politics problems. Pierre Poilievre in Canada, he has, his aides have implicitly blamed Trump for everything and said, oh, there was no way we could have won this election once the Trump thing happened. No, there could have been if your entire platform was not just tax cuts and increasing mandatory minimum sentences. There was not a single proposal in the Conservative platform that they announced that they talked about that was not either a tax cut or a mandatory minimum increase. Nothing else. And they're going to say it's all Trump's fault that Poilievre lost the election? I don't think so.
It's that they had not captured the Canadian attention on an issue that they really wanted to, risk going to the polls and voting for. If you let it remain as unmoored from issues as they did, then yes, a big gust of wind came in against you, but it was your fault for not locking it down.
It was your fault for not having anything to turn the channel from,
Yeah.
It was Trump 24/7 because you didn't have anything better. Yeah. But, it's just easier to blame Trump. It solves everyone's domestic problems, except you're not in government, and that should be your problem. But I'm happy that Pierre Poilievre's not in government, so what do I know?
Oh, man. And so, Carney marches on. He certainly is somebody that is at home with the Davos crowd. He is an internationalist through and through, and very much kind of cemented himself as the king of the middles. I don't know exactly what it means, but certainly was a speech that got a lot of attention.
I think the thing about Carney and the advantage that Carney has is the one time I will say he is in some ways Trumpian, which is that he doesn't pretend to be something that he's not, right? Yeah. Trump never ran away from his money. He never claimed to be a working class hero, right? He claimed to be a champion for the working class. And, people can endlessly debate whether his presidency has sort of met that promise, but he has never pretended to be something that he wasn't. He never pretended to be anything other than the rich guy, from television. Carney's the same way. Carney is an elite. Of course he's an elite. He worked for Goldman Sachs. He went into public policy. He was governor of the Bank of Canada, governor of the Bank of England, and went back to private equity. The guy's the biggest elite of the elites. Yeah. But the fact that he doesn't pretend otherwise is his best asset. Of course he looks comfortable with the Davos elites. That's literally his people. And I think there is a lesson for, 2028 Democrats. Just own it. Just own the thing that there is to own, because, Mark Carney attempting to do like an aw shucks working man thing would be the worst possible outcome. But Carney is comfortable with those people. He doesn't pretend otherwise. Yeah. And, he's at least so far doing what the Canadian people want. And it's been a good prime ministership so far.
All right. What is the most interesting thing from your perspective in American politics?
Chuck Schumer desperately clinging on to the idea that Democrats will like him by the time that he is forced to ignominiously retire. Because how on earth has this guy's Senate recruitment been either the best or the worst this year? I don't know how we got Mary Peltola to say yes. I genuinely don't. She could have walked into the governor's mansion and had a government that would have been effective. Weird minority coalition stuff in Alaska has been, very interesting. So it's hard to call it like a true trifecta in the same way that it that term is understood in the lower 48. But Peltola would have had a governing, a very easy governing trifecta in Alaska, and she chose a centerist. And that is if we're going to give Chuck Schumer
that is impressive.
If we're going to give Chuck Schumer shit for everything else that he deserves that for, getting Peltola, getting Sherrod Brown, whittling the field down somewhat effectively already in Iowa, that is quite an interesting proposition. And, we don't know what's going to end up happening with DHS funding, but, Schumer got 46 Democrats to say that they were fine shutting the government down over DHS funding within 24 hours. Schumer.
Well, yeah, I don't know how hard that was going to be. I think he was surfing a wave there.
Probably, but in fairness,
and also he's learned his lesson from the last government shutdown. It's better to just get out of the way instead of even pretending to stop it.
Right, but I think at some point, if Schumer is going to be this sort of figure of liberal hatred and left wing hatred amongst Democrats, we do need to give him his flowers occasionally, because no one thought the last time, the first time I was on last year, if you would have asked me, what do I have the chances of Democrats winning the Senate at? I would have probably said 10%. And I would have said that felt generous to Democrats.
Yeah.
Now that number is, not 50%, not even probably 30%, but it's 25 probably. And that is in large part to Chuck Schumer doing a very good job in Senate recruitment in two of the most important reach states. And yet he also tried to impose Haley Stevens on everybody in Michigan, which doesn't really seem like that's going to work.
No.
Which is, I think, going to bail him out of people being that mad at him, because, when Mallory McMorrow wins that primary, I think everyone is going to be pretty happy. And it's kind of, it won't make even the top 5 things of the first 2 years of Trump 2.0 that people are pissed at Schumer about.
No. Yeah. I mean, the question is, I've talked to a few people within Schumer world, and I think they are bitter at other people around, the Democratic ecosystem, and they have a very low opinion of some of the people that are trying to usurp him. But they know, they understand, they read the writing on the wall, and they kind of have scratched their head at some of the decisions that their leader has made.
Yeah, it's just, there was, I think it was a Politico article a few months back being like, Chuck Schumer is the only person who doesn't realize that he is not running again.
Yeah.
And that sounds about right for the state of Schumer. I think the Senate, is far more interesting, partially because Republicans, the Republican gerrymandering effort, midterm gerrymandering effort, hasn't worked. And so all it's done is kind of lock in that the Democrats are going to win the House.
Yeah.
It's limited Democrats' upside for sure. It's limited their upside. Democrats have, I do the math, and I think my current House prediction, which I haven't posted, but I think it's 225 Democrats, which doesn't sound like it's a big majority. And yet I'm I can't find 8 more seats for Republicans to win.
Yeah.
Not in this environment at all. But I also can't really find 10 more Democrats to get them to Nancy Pelosi 2018 style 235. Yeah. All you've done is just make station owners in Iowa, which has three competitive districts, oh great. So all the money that would have been spent in Virginia and would have been spent in California is now going to be spent in Iowa. Congratulations.
Good for them.
At least there are some winners in the destruction of, the destruction of competitive House maps.
Yeah. I mentioned this earlier in the show, but talking to people within the Republican machinery, their sense is they're going to lose and everything's going to be expensive. Things that they didn't think were going to be expensive are going to be expensive. Everybody needs to expect that they are going to be out. They're going to be about. They're going to be with their constituents, and they're going to be putting things on the airwaves, because there's not going to be a whole lot of room for cruising to a victory. Everything's going to be a lot tighter. And ultimately, if they lose, I don't know, man. Congress is such a mess right now, because there's nowhere that likes their leadership. Democrats are furious that they are not pressing a lot of this stuff a lot harder. They do not like Hakeem Jeffries. He is going to face a leadership challenge when Democrats become the majority in that chamber, in my opinion. And if he doesn't, then he is going to be in for an extraordinarily rocky speakership because he doesn't have control of that chamber. And like, it's going to be actually here. Let me ask you this. This Bill Clinton, Comer thing. So it advances out of the committee. For those of you who are unaware, as part of the Epstein oversight, they have subpoenaed Bill and Hillary. And so now, since their censure has kind of cleared the oversight committee, it now goes to the full chamber. And I was debating with somebody who's on the Republican side whether or not Democrats would vote to censure Bill Clinton. And whether or not apparently on the Republican side, they're concerned that it sets a precedent for Democrats to do it for Trump. But I don't know. I mean, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of thought from inside Congress that Democrats would do that to Bill Clinton, which is like crazy to me, because as much as people want to think that he is off the stage, there's still a lot of powerful people that have Bill Clinton in extraordinarily high regard.
Yeah, but the thing is that to a lot of people who are like, I don't think it's that would be so much an ideological split in the party, because I think a lot of Democrats will view that as an opportunity to vocalize the sort of, or to itemize in a vote what a lot of people have vocalized, which is, hey, Bill Clinton did something wrong. Bill Clinton did something wrong. Like we're not here to protect our, alleged whatever word we want to use that won't get us sued. We have no problem. We have no problem with accountability for our guy. Why don't you have accountability for your guy? And I think
so didn't we find Bill Clinton going to jail for not appearing?
I mean, I suspect that they will censure him through the House. Clinton will then they will end up backing down and or try and play this out in the courts for a while. But like at the end of the day, a congressional subpoena is a congressional subpoena, and respectfully, you show up for a congressional subpoena. And I think a lot of Democrats under 50 are not going to view Bill Clinton as a hill worth dying on, especially when, one, we already know that Republicans are going to win the vote, and two, committee members have already done it. And has anyone faced any repercussions? I don't really think so.
Not yet.
Is Jeffries really going to whip? Is Jeffries really going to have the ability to do a hard and fast whip when 7 Democrats just voted for ICE funding and they're fine, and half of the Democrats on the committee voted to censure at least one of the Clintons and they're going to be fine?
He doesn't have the ability to whip anything at all whatsoever, which is the problem with him becoming Speaker of the House.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic, because the thing that we don't know the answer to, because we've never, in all of this time, right, we've never seen one very specific combination of divided government, which is Democratic House, Republican Senate, Democratic presidency. And so theoretically, that combination in, if that's what comes up after 2028, could be very interesting. I think John Thune, with a Democratic president, would be willing to pass a lot of that bipartisan agenda, CHIPS, the PACT Act, a lot of the stuff that Biden got done, the postal reform stuff, that Biden was able to get done in that first term, in addition to the 2 big reconciliation packages. But Thune has no incentive to do that when Donald Trump doesn't care. Yeah. Thune has no incentive to do any of that in the final 2 years of a lame duck presidency. He's just going to, He's not going to give Hakeem Jeffries any wins. He's not going to let Hakeem, bounce him into, 40% Democratic new ideas and try and pressure Trump into signing it. That's not what anyone is going to do here.
Yeah.
At which point Jeffries is going to spend 2 years passing meaningless messaging bills that, die without a vote.
And they're going to argue like cats and dogs about which meaningless messaging bills are going to get voted on. That's what's going to happen.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be so much fun to cover, and it's going to be entirely meaningless. And you also, 17 people are going to be running for president. Yeah. Half of whom are like senators. Oh, it's gonna be hellaciously boring, but also extremely exciting.
We're gonna open up the pit. Okay. Look, I've delayed long enough. Go ahead. Ask what you wanted to ask.
So, how we feeling about Mike McCarthy and the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Bleak, my friend. Bleak. Look, let me just tell you this, and this is something I've had to reconcile with over the last 72 hours. I was under the assumption that being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan meant something different than what it actually did. What I thought the promise of being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan was you got 3 coaches your entire life, 4 if you ate salads. Like that this was a different way of doing things. You invest young in promising developmental talent. You give them an organizational stability that is unlike anything else in the very chaotic world of the NFL that thinks in shorter windows. The Steelers think in windows that are decades long. The minimum is you get 1 Super Bowl and the coach goes to the Hall of Fame. And that's only because you run up against stronger dynasties. The maximum is you're the dynasty and you win 4 or 5 Super Bowls. This is a short-sighted move. I am of the belief that it only happened because Mike McCarthy is, by all accounts, and by seeing him on the Pat McAfee show, an extraordinary hang. I bet you I would love Mike McCarthy if I were to just hang with him at a bar. I'm sure he seems to be an extraordinarily affable guy that obviously knows football. And I think that Art Rooney II was charmed by him. And we decided to go away from one of the most tried and true formulas for success in a league that guarantees none of that. And so I have become very black-pilled on all of this. You want to know what my number one thought was, Evan? I need to find new hobbies. I need to find hobbies that don't hurt me because I was too emotionally invested in the idea that I would just get to live with Chris Shula, my new coach, until I die. And that was it was hard. It was hard to deal with. That's my thoughts.
That was how I felt when I'm a Packers fan. So that was how I felt after the our playoff loss to the Bears. I was like, why do I do this to myself?
Yeah.
But can I make the hopium case for why the Mike McCarthy hire is actually a stroke of strategic brilliance?
Look, I'm here for the hopium case. Strategic brilliance is going to take a real effort, but please go ahead.
This is such a bad hire. This is such a horrible hire that you might accidentally fall yourself ass backwards into a top 5 pick, a season so bad the fan base actually revolts, and you might get Arch Manning anyways. This team is going to be an abomination next year because Mike McCarthy is one of the worst coaches I have ever seen coach football games. Oh, he has the same win percentage basically as John Harbaugh. Yeah, man, he had prime Aaron Rodgers, and he made every single one of those wins look hard.
Yeah,
that offense was unimaginative in 2015, let alone 2026. This thing is going to be an utter disaster, and frankly, I think this is going to be so bad that you are going to be taking far higher than you used to. This isn't going to work because the thing about Mike McCarthy is he is not a leader of men. Mike Tomlin, it's always hard to know with 4th down decisions, with clock management. We see that stuff. We don't see how they are as a leader of men. But Tomlin has dragged
without a flinch. Every single person that's been coached by Mike Tomlin would probably die for him.
They would run through fire for him in 2 seconds for that. It wouldn't even take 2 seconds. They would just need to find their shoes to do it. Like all of these people love him.
That was apparently everybody in the locker room when he resigned. What you heard over and over again was we did this to coach. Like that was their thought was that they let him down.
Yeah, no one is going to feel that way about Mike McCarthy. 4 weeks in, there will be strategic leaking about how much he sucks. The division, I know it's a bad division this year. I'd like to think at some point the Bengals will get their shit together. That might just be even more hopium. But the AFC is deep in terms of good teams, not deep in terms of elite teams, but deep in terms of good teams. Atlanta, New Orleans, some of the usual sort of bugbears of the bottom rung of the last 5 years. They look like they're getting better. At the very least, aren't trying. And next year's quarterback class looks really good. Dante Moore, Arch Manning. I think you guys are going to like sneakily, this isn't going to work. You're going to pull the trigger. You're going to pull the plug on the season, pull the trigger on the 1 year mini tank that you guys have been putting off. Get your quarterback, get a Chris Shula or maybe the Rams the passing game coordinator,
Steelhouse.
Because I don't think both of them are going to be hired. Frankly, I don't really think they're
Steelhouse is allegedly the ones that the one that the Browns are going to be able to get. So Steelhouse might be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns.
I wouldn't take that if I was him.
Nor would anybody else. Nobody wants to be in Cleveland, but like for him to go from passing game coordinator with no head coaching experience at all to getting a job, that's the kind of guy you get for a gig like that.
Yeah, but like go get Mike. Next year's coaching carousel will be great. Go get Mike McDaniels after making Justin Herbert.
I mean, like honestly, Mike McCarthy would be a great Browns head coach. Yeah, like that's my thing. Is like I saw that hire and I'm like, oh, we're a poverty franchise. We're thinking poverty franchise thoughts. Like Mike McCarthy's a good idea. But like for the Browns, he is a good idea because at the very least, he is going to bring some element of remember when I coach Aaron Rodgers. Remember when I got, good production out of Dak Prescott. Like this is the thing that drives me up a wall. And this is everything that I've read with Art Rooney about Mike McCarthy is, he develops quarterbacks. We are going to find ourselves in a situation where we need a quarterback. He develops quarterbacks, to which I would have one very key question. When, since the iPhone was invented, has Mike McCarthy developed a quarterback? Because Aaron Rodgers, I'll give him Aaron Rodgers. But that started before Steve Jobs invented a 3-in-1 device, a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator on stage. And it's been a while since the second George W. Bush administration. I was a young man then. I am now a 40-plus-year-old man with a child. Like we're in a different world. Mike McCarthy has not done that in a very, very long time.
Put some respect on Matt Flynn's name. Packers legend Matt Flynn.
True.
Do you remember the one Matt Flynn game that got him a $25 million contract?
Of course. Yeah, was that a Week 16 game? Battle?
It was week 8. It was week 17 against Detroit. We didn't have to play for anything. They did, and he owns like every single game passing record in Packers history. And then immediately lost a camp battle to Russell Wilson the next year in Seattle. Yeah. Fun times. No, Mike McCarthy's a great hire for a bad team. He's a culture setter, and he's a baseline, but like you guys don't need a baseline. You need somebody to.
We went from Mike Tomlin. Like if we wanted to do this, and look, Mike Tomlin deserves to do whatever he wants. He is great. If he wants to do TV, if he wants to just write motivational books, fine. He can do that. He can just be a supportive husband to his wife's fashion brand. He deserves to do whatever he wants. That's fine. I have nothing but love and respect for Mike Tomlin, but to go from him to Mike McCarthy is like going from a best case scenario, we're not going anywhere, to a worst case scenario, we're not going anywhere. Like Mike Tomlin is somebody that like we're probably going to be in the exact same situation that we were at, and bad injury luck went our way. And so we weren't able to freak win one of the wild card games that we were in. Like, I was not as down on Mike Tomlin as other people, but it still would have been, without a quarterback, a feat if we had gone further in the playoffs. But it's possible. I don't see us going anywhere with Mike McCarthy at all, whatsoever. It's just, it's so. Now, you're right. Maybe this is just a total disaster. And maybe we get a super high draft pick next year when the quarterbacks are actually good. Although, look, the quarterbacks were supposed to be good this year, and they weren't because everybody in college, the money is so good in college, everyone's staying for 9 years. So I don't know that next year is going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, Moore coming back for a season and Arch Manning, I think, gives you 2 high-end quarterbacks in next year's draft at least. I mean, I don't know. My like hottest take is that Arch Manning is actually like quite good, and I think that a lot of people overreacted to what was, I think, with the benefit of hindsight, very obviously him being hurt at the beginning of the season.
I bet on Texas a lot at the beginning of the season, and I watched a lot of Arch Manning. I was not in love with what I saw.
The shoulder, the throwing motion by the end of the season was completely.
But by the end of the season, he was great.
So like, great. And he didn't. It really looks like if you go back and watch the Ohio State game, if you go back and even watch the Florida game that they lost, which kept them out of the playoff, like he did not have the full range of motion in his throwing shoulder. I think the end of the season, I think, was much more indicative of what he is, and I think he's going to make a great quarterback. And I think it's really funny because inevitably somehow the Jets will get screwed because they will be in position to take him and Peyton. They will Manning his way out of New York. There is absolutely no way that he is going to become a Jet. No. It's going to be so funny to see the
which is that was one of the things that I was thinking is that it's like you know at some point of the like approved franchises that that the Manning family would say, oh, we want him to go here. The Steelers that I know that hire a young coordinator and are the picture of stability, that's a franchise that the Manning family respects. They like old world, stable franchises and family run franchises. They prefer family run franchises. It's just this, God. Oh my God. I was so depressed, man. I was so absolutely depressed by that hire.
I'm so glad the Packers extended Matt LaFleur. There was
that was like an accounting thing, right? They were like lowballing him.
Yeah, it doesn't seem great that, we do this, but then again, the Packers have their weird, not really ownership structure, so it's always a bit complicated. But like when I just loved getting the quote. This is just going to be a dagger to your heart, and I'm sorry, but the NFL exec from another team who just texted Diana Rossini, "This is going to get done. Letting him go would be stupid. The Packers don't do stupid shit." And I'm like, yeah. I like that. That's how my franchise is seen around the league.
I liked the world where I thought mine was like that too. I appreciated that world. That was a beautiful world. I really liked that world. You have no idea how excited I was to root for the Rams on Sunday because I was looking at my next coaches. I was like, this is it. I have Steelhouse is going to be the OC. Shula's going to be the head coach. Shula grew up. He went to my rival high school while I was in high school in South Florida. He went to the high school with the really good football program, St. Thomas Aquinas. And we were just down the road from them and got the crap kicked out of us every year. But, so I was like, oh my God, he's a South Florida guy. This is perfect. This is amazing. What a great, I just know I'll have and then everything. And then Mike McCarthy. And here's the other thing is like, he is an affable guy. And so it's going to be hard to hate him, which means I'm like the poison that I will feel for him will be that much more. And I know it because I've seen it happen with two different fan bases. The Green Bay fan base turned against him and the Dallas fan base turned against them. And it wasn't because they weren't winning games. It was because they couldn't get over the hump. The same reason people got mad at one of the most likable coaches of all time, Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, and Mike McCarthy couldn't get over the hump with arguably a top 5 quarter, like in terms of just raw skill. I know he doesn't have the resume, but like Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Like, hate that man's politics, hate everything he's done in the last 5 years. That man, the things that he did for me as a fan, having him as my quarterback was such a great feeling. Just knowing, okay, I can win any game. I don't care how good the opponent is, bad the opponent is, we can win this game. Shout out to Ryan Jakubowski, his Seahawks in the Super Bowl.
Good.
PX3 returning champion.
PX3 guest, friend of the show.
When are we doing a 3-man pod again?
We'll do it.
We need like an early midterms. We need some like early midterms.
You can't get me depressed and then make me do scheduling work. Like that's just mean.
No, I'm just saying.
That's it. No. We'll have them on. We'll figure it out. All right.
Nice.
Scrim, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you?
Scrimshaw Unscripted.substack.com. Scrimshaw show is coming back. I am soft launching a Sens podcast at the moment because I have hockey thoughts with the son of a Canadian cabinet minister. So that was fun to record last week. There will be US content soon-ish. I was going to write something this week and then like I just like being like I have political opinions after what happened in Minnesota felt gross. So but that's coming soon. 2026 coverage will be happening partially because I find the Senate map so interesting and so fascinating, and like the governor's map looks pretty fun, and political betting is really easy to be good at because people are really bad at it. So it's at some point I will have some. I'm working on schemes to bring back a form of what I used to do for the lines.
Nice.
We're making plans. We're making moves. Scrimshaw on Twitter. There'll be plenty of Winter Olympics live tweeting. If anyone wants to watch me crash out about Canadian curling.
Man, actually, you just reminded me. The hockey tournament in the Winter Olympics is always A++++. That's always
when we're actually allowed to send NHLers. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I'm so excited. Team Canada are so stupid, awesome. But somehow you guys are stupider. Like, can we just stop being like we need to build a hockey team based on like how we used to do this in the 90s? Just pick the good players.
Just go.
Why is picking the good players a hard thing to do?
Yeah, it's good. It's fun. Everybody likes it. All right, that's it. See you later, Scrim. And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics is written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. You can send me an email, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. A big thank you to Evan for coming on the program. Scrimmy. We love Scrimmy. Find, follow, and share video clips of the show. TikTok, Justin R. Young. It's the same on Instagram and Twitter. On YouTube, it's Politics. And download Substack TV. If you just log in on your Substack account, if you already follow me on Substack, it'll just log you right in. Boom, I'm already there. Somebody said in our chat, you don't need a jury this big in your television. Yeah, you do. In fact, you need it bigger. You need IMAX gerbs. That's what you need. That's next. As soon as I conquer Substack TV, we're getting on an IMAX. Of course, you can always get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, either $3 a week or $99 for the entire year. That's 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100. Our founding tier gets your name read at the end of the show like these fine folks in the foundational tier: Sonny Black, L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Nick, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, Neil, Casey, oh yeah, it's Adam, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Michael, Matt, DP4 Bongo, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Paul, Gloria Young, my mom, a dog named Checkers, Jerry Trucker, John Berkeley, Stephen, and Zombie Doc. You want your name read on the show? Take Politics Seriously is where you need to go, friends. That's it, man. Heavy week, and it's only going to be more eventful. Stay safe, everybody. Still is cold, still is icy. Till next time, this is your old pal, Justin Robert Young, saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that dares discuss. Three.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program. Dog and Pony Show audio.